Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kerrilee, Auger. I am the Skills Development Officer here at Women's Enterprise Center. I develop and deliver all our training and mentoring programs that we provide to women entrepreneurs throughout the province of BC, and I work out of our head office here in Kelowna. So thank you for joining us all today on this call. And just another reminder, please, to use *6 or the mute button on your phone to mute this call so we don't have any of that distracting background noise, please. So quickly, I'll just go over the agenda for today's call, and then we'll jump right in and get started. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about Women's Enterprise Center and the services we provide. I'll do a brief introduction of our two panelists, and then we'll get started with them telling their own story and introducing themselves. The discussion based on the questions submitted when you registered for the call. So I'm really excited to be learning from both Sandra and Baila today. The Women's Enterprise Center is the leading business resource center for aspiring and established women businesses in BC. We provide business loans up to $150,000. We do training through live workshops, online webinars, and calls such as this. We provide mentoring through peer group and one-to-one formats. We do business advisory services. So if you ever have any questions in your business, you can call in, and that's a free service that we provide. And then we provide a lot of online resources that you can download and access on our website. We have 3 offices, the main office here in Kelowna, and then a satellite office in both Vancouver and Victoria. So our passion is to empower entrepreneurs to their business success. This topic today, we're going to provide you how to be successful in pitching your story to the media. So we're actually a nonprofit organization funded by the federal government, funded through Western Economic Diversification, and we're part of the Women's Enterprise Initiative, which includes very similar organizations in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. So if you have any friends or colleagues in those areas, there's organizations that can support them there as well. So to be sure to stay informed of what we have upcoming and topics and events that might be relevant to you, please make sure that you go to wec.ca, that's wec.ca, to sign up for our e-news and e-blast. Now to get started with today's topic, getting your business noticed. So part of the, in marketing of your business and trying to get that exposure is to gain some media coverage. So, that good publicity is a very cost-effective way to boost the profile of your business. So today we're going to learn how to get some of that coverage for your business through both traditional and new media outlets, and learn how to create a good story that's going to get you noticed. So who are the relationships that you need to build? Which media outlets do you need to target? How do you pitch your story? How do you write your pitch? What are the different types of media you should consider? How long does it take you once you start that pitch? What do you think that lead time is? And then why do you want to actually? How will it be an advantage to you as a business owner? And then how do you identify as that owner the channel that will serve your needs and meet your customers? So today, to help us answer all of those questions, we have very excited to have Baila of the rebranded Disruptive PR. She's an award-winning writer and editor, a media strategist, a speaker, and an instructor at Small Business BC. She was the managing editor of Glacier Media Magazines and Special Publications Divisions, news features editor at Business in Vancouver newspaper, and a business commentator for Global Morning News. Her 20-plus years of journalism include print, radio, television, and online production. She's been featured as a speaker for the BC Communications Forum, the Get Set Go Summit, Vancouver Island Tourism, and Soho, Victoria, among others. She provides workshops, webinars, and consulting sessions on media strategies to entrepreneurs, small businesses, nonprofits, and marketing companies. Thank you for joining us today, Baila.
Thank you for having me. Love to be here.
And our second panelist today is Sandra Nomoto of Conscious PR. She has always loved writing stories. As a child, she cared about world issues but didn't have the right outlet to express that awareness. After nearly 2 years working in a public relations firm, she knew that the corporate world wasn't for her and started to to do PR her own way in 2008. In 2011, a serendipitous series of events reawakened her consciousness of her place in the world and the passion she had as a child. An idea she had 2 years prior returned, a business that reflected her values rather than one that reflected a successful image. She decided that 2012 was the right time to launch a PR brand and use her storytelling skills to encourage the already conscious movement. With 10 years of public relations experience, she is one human on a mission to help companies and events tell stories of positive social and environmental change through traditional and social media. So thank you as well, Sandra, for joining us today. Welcome to you both. And
thank you
for sharing your knowledge and expertise and time today. So quickly, before we get started, again, just one quick reminder to use mute your phones, please, for those of you calling in, and I will let you know when you can unmute and ask some questions. So if you have a notebook, pen and paper handy, and you think of a question during a discussion, please jot that down, and we will have lots of time for you to get some of those questions answered if they don't come up in the regular ongoing conversation. So,
can I just make one comment? The line is really noisy, so I'm not sure if on your end, because you're on a speakerphone, but it's really difficult to hear you.
Okay, I've picked up my handset. Is that better for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit better.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Maybe there's an error with my phone. I apologize for that.
Yeah, it sounds like there's scraping going on, like a loose connection or something, and the scraping comes over your words. It's kind of hard to hear something.
Oh, well, I apologize. Hopefully using the handset will be better, but yeah, I'm hearing that noise too, and I wasn't sure if that was feedback from another caller. So hopefully we will rise above the noise today, which is one of the hopefully topics of our discussion as well. And please, yes, let me know if there's too many interruptions. So hopefully we'll get the call to settle down. So Baila, let's start off with you. I did a brief introduction of both you and Sandra, but you, of course, can tell your story the best. So maybe you could give us a bit more detail on your background, why you do what you do, and how did you come to work in the media space?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I've always had a profound curiosity about exploring the world and was always good at writing when I was in college and on to university. And so I basically graduated from a graduate degree in journalism and just started right into CBC television, I think was my first job. And I just kept going and went through all the different TV and radio and newspapers and then online eventually. Just picking up the work as it, when I got tired of doing one thing, I would try something else. I've always been a journalist, so I've always been a writer of some sort, a freelance writer, even as I was being an editor or producer. And that led me, I started in Montreal, actually, and then went to Edmonton and ended up in Vancouver. So my last gig was 8 years at Business in Vancouver newspaper, where I was managing editor of the Business Examiner and features editor for their weekly inserts and editing the magazines. And to me, that's just, I love it. It's like putting a puzzle together. It's trying to balance all the different elements of a good journalistic piece. And I'm a natural editor, I think. I'm very, I have a facility with words, so when somebody writes something, it just doesn't take me long to get it to the point where it's going to be a really good piece to present information to people. And I just keep doing that. And eventually, as I saw a need in the industry, I saw a lot of small businesses pitching to Business in Vancouver who didn't know how to pitch. And of course, it's not surprising. People don't really learn how to pitch to media as part of their business acumen, if you will. So I just started doing these courses. I approached Small Business BC and I said, hey, would you be interested in having somebody teach entrepreneurs how to put together some media pitches, how to identify which media outlets would be good, what they're looking for in stories. And that was 4 years ago, and I've basically been doing that ever since.
Oh, great. That sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge you're going to be able to share with us today, because based on the questions we've received, I'm quite confident between you and Sandra we're going to be able to answer most of those. So Sandra, why don't we take it over to you as well, and you can kind of do the same thing, a little more introduction, and kind of the why you do what you do, and what's happening in your world right now.
Hello.
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 Hi, it's Linda. I called in late.
That's okay. So it's, as you stated in my bio, writing has always been a love of mine, my best skill, I would say. And so I happened to land in the PR industry right after school. I never intended to, but the internship came my way, and so that's where I learned a lot of my, pretty much learned on the job. And I left that company because we did mostly event planning there, and I knew I didn't want to be an event planner, but I was just really fascinated about media relations and that aspect of storytelling. And so I took enough marketing courses at BCIT just to get the educational foundation, and I also didn't feel like applying at any other PR firms. So kind of floundered for 6 months, wondered what I wanted to do next, and one of my best friends was putting on an art exhibit, this is 10 years ago now, and asked me to help him. And so I learned the skills that I used working for that PR firm to help him, and then kind of the light bulb went off to start freelancing. And so I started my business in early 2008, and then in 2011, it was just a really big personal year for me. I was doing a lot of self-development, yoga, meditation, and meeting a lot of business people in town who are, I would call them socially and environmentally conscious, or just conscious is what I call them for short. And I realized I really wanted to use my business to reflect my own personal values in helping people and helping the environment. And so I rebranded the business in 2012. So it didn't really change the business itself, but just did a redirect and started attracting those types of clients that I wanted to work with. So Conscious PR is the brand that I've been running for the last 5 years, and we've also expanded to include social media as another service, and I have a director that works with me, student interns that work with me, and in the next very soon, 48 weeks, I would say, we're going to be transitioning again into more of a full service change and marketing agency, and so helping businesses out with a lot more services related to BR, but also other things. So yeah.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Kerrilee.
Yes. Well, and PR is kind of that one small piece in that whole marketing mix, right? It's got to complement the other things you're doing. So maybe we should start with the question. You know, the people on the call are interested in this topic. You know, maybe they've got some ideas. And Baila, maybe you can start here. Like, where if you're just starting your media and PR and pitch process, where should you start? What are kind of the first steps you should take, and what do you need to have ready before you approach a media outlet?
Yeah, so the absolute first thing I always start off with when I have students in my classes is you need to really understand what you do yourself and how to express it. And I started off the call today asking people to tell me what you do in a sentence, and that was kind of a little bit of a tricky test to see just how many people are very clear on being able to describe what they do in one or two sentences without going on. And that's so important to get that honed really well, because before you reach out to media, you want to know you're going to be able to describe whatever it is you do very quickly. You might bump into somebody randomly at a networking event who is in a media decision maker role. You might be presenting a media pitch by email or even picking up the phone. You want to be able to know what you do and be able to express it really succinctly. And I usually say, just finish the sentence. The problem I help solve is, or the way I help businesses or consumers is. Just one sentence that gives me a really good sense of what you do. And don't delve into the why yet, because a lot of people do that at the beginning, and it leads people down a bit of the wrong path. because we need to know that what you do is something we're interested in before we necessarily know why you do it. And the second most important thing is to start the research into different media outlets. So if you're interested in being in television, start to watch television. If you're interested in being on a podcast, start to listen to that podcast. Become familiar with media. Media likes to be treated like you would treat a client. So you wouldn't, if you approach somebody who might be a potential client, you wouldn't just throw things at them before you ask them what they needed. You would start to find out, first off, what their needs were, and second, do you have something that fits their needs? And being able to align what you have, either a product or service, that would be able to fit the needs of a media outlet is how you make that great win-win situation.
Oh, that is great information. Sandra, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, my tips are, I think, more practical. I would extend that point in terms of who to connect with at media, because there's so many types of media outlets and in various industries. So I would start with just get to know who the local business media people are, and then the folks in your industry. So I know there are folks here, in hospitality, in personal development, somebody in a lighting company, right? And so get to know who the folks are who are telling the stories in those industries, because that's who you're eventually going to want to contact when you have something to tell. Yep. And then I would also add, prepare your website in terms of a newsroom. So you can call this newsroom, you can call this media, whatever you want to call it, but in place of what used to be called the traditional media kit, we can all just prepare that stuff online on a web page. And so this is sort of your background information that a media person would need to do a story on your business. So things like a bio, which should be on your website anyway, high resolution photos, whether that's you or you doing business, or your place of business. Videos are great. Statistics related to your industry, and then any other supporting information that's supporting the story that you're pitching. So that's so I would call like this online newsroom page or this media page on your website another great tool that you can already start building before you send anything out.
Okay, great. And thinking back to what I'm going to call the old school press release that you used to see, the date, who it's from, the subject line, and then at the end there's always that about and your company. So what are some of the things in that are important? Baila, you mentioned the, what do I do? In that blurb at the bottom, what's some key information that you want to have there? Because I noticed most of them are pretty short. So if there's any, maximum word count, or maybe the key information that you need to kind of keep in that about us bit that's at the bottom, because that, I think, whether, you're doing that traditional press release, whether it's through new media, I think the media outlets want to quickly learn who you are as well and have something that they can share. So either if you want to step in and kind of, what are the key things that you need to have in that about us information that you send?
I'll jump in. So first, I suggest people divide whatever kind of pitch they're sending into two. So the top half would be if somebody opened it up, an email in their email client, what would they see? And actually there are surveys that have been done. There's a survey from a couple of years ago that asked several different questions of about 500 journalists and editors, and their response was the top part with your basic information of what your story is that you're pitching should be 150 words. So that's very little. And it should be lots of white space and just even point form, no more long paragraphs. But at the bottom, when you get to that About Us page, About Us section, you can go a little bit deeper. So that's the idea, is that if I've read your opening sentence about who you are, which should be near the top, maybe you've put in some of the interesting angles for the story so I can identify really quickly if there's something there for my media outlet. Maybe you have bullet points about the topics you want to speak to, or a couple of sentences about describing what kind of article would be good. Once I've read that, if I'm interested, then I'm going to get to the background. And that's where you can actually expand. And I would say you could probably go 250, 300 words there. That's the place where you could put why you started what you do. So like I said earlier, if I get through the top and I'm interested to see, okay, this really has a relevance to my media outlet, then I'll read further and have that background. Also, between the two, so at the bottom of the first part, that's where you should probably put a link in to that media page that Sandra was just talking about, so that I can click on it and get all the succinct information I need, again, on one page on your website.
Okay, great. And Sandra, that takes me now to, in that top half, the 150 words in point form. How do we write that pitch? What are we trying to accomplish? So how do we determine what the goal is? And then in that point form, what are the things that you want to put there so that you do get the attention of the person that's reading that email?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this, because we actually have a no news release policy here at Conscious PR.
Yep.
Of course, I used to use these when I was starting out, but I think they're going the way of the dinosaur for several reasons. I know they're still being used now, but first of all, they're just so long, right? And a lot of media folk, they, as Baila mentioned, they at a glance have to gather what it is you do and what exactly the story is that you're pitching to them. So I actually discourage people from writing a release either in an email, in the body of an email, or as an attachment. A lot of people won't even open an email if it's got an attachment. So what we like to use is the 3-sentence email pitch, and this could be bullet point form if you want, but really in 3 sentences, and as Baila said, that could be like 150 words, which is not a lot. You really want to say, who you are, what your company is, maybe a little bit about what you do, if that's not self-explanatory in the first sentence, and then get right to the story of what the pitch is, and why the readers of the outlet, the viewers, or the listeners need to learn about what it is that you're telling them. And so I really try to encourage my staff to get the pitch to get that story in 3 sentences, because if you can save yourself time from writing 400 words, you're going to save that person some time in reading all that. And then, as Baila said, here's the link to my newsroom for more information. And that's where you can include all that background information that would have traditionally been included in a news release. And, you can put stuff like your social media accounts, maybe a blog post that supports the story that you're telling. And so all of this background stuff that would help them can be available on this newsroom. And so, again, you're seeing a lot of white space in the email. In my experience, media like that, because they can get the gist of the story in a matter of seconds, and it'll be easy for them to reply back to you and see exactly what they need that may be missing. So
great.
Yeah, I want to just jump right in because to underline something that Sandra said, and that is, why should the audience of the media outlet care?
Yes.
I actually tell people when you're writing a pitch, have this sentence, why your audience should care, : and just write it so that the recipient can see that you've taken the time to think about that. The actual audience is not the media outlet. It's the people who watch the show. It's the people who read the magazine. It's the people who listen to the podcast. Those are the people who want to gain information, knowledge, or entertainment from what you're saying or what you're writing or when people interview you. So if you can put 1 sentence in that says why your audience should care, that really hits home with a media decision maker.
Great. So that brings me to another question, is which media should I target, right? So you've got this idea, you've got a great story idea. How do you determine if it is like the business in Vancouver that you want to target, if it's a radio talk show, if it's a podcast? How can we start doing that research to find out who we should pitch to?
I'll go. So the first thing I would start with is if you can, find out where your clients. If I assume people want to pitch to media because they want to be in front of their clients. So they want their clients or potential clients to know more about them. So one way to start is to try and find out where do your clients get the information they're looking for. So, for instance, let's say I had a client myself who was very knowledgeable about feng shui for the home and office. And I said, okay, well, why don't you survey some of your clients and find out where do they get information about their home? Like, do they read home magazines? Do they go onto home websites? Are there certain places where they get that information? So if you know that your potential clients are accessing certain types of media outlets, that's number one place you want to be, so that you're in front of your ideal client, your ideal prospect. In a broad sense, you want to identify, of course, are you business to business or business to consumer? So right there you can divide and conquer, so to speak. So if you have a consumer product, you'd want to be in consumer magazines, business products, or business papers and magazines. As well, when you think about what's going to serve your purpose the best, so are you geographically located, like limited? Do you have a physical store and you want people to come into your store? Then the media outlets would probably be within the vicinity of people who would be able to make that commute. If you are a business consultant and you can work with people anywhere in the world, then you start to look at media outlets beyond your geography. And then finally, one tip is this. Find out where your competitors are. So when I work with authors, I say, okay, I want you to give me a list of 3 or 4 authors who might be your competitors. So let's say I'm working with a business consultant who's written a book. I say, okay, give me some names of people who might have written similar books. And then we find out where there has been media coverage about them. And if you can find out where media coverage has been about your competitors or people in your industry, as Sandra was mentioning earlier, then that's the place where you want to be as well.
Perfect. And I think in doing that research too, especially on the competitors, you'll find out what's already been out there perhaps recently, and you might see what you're pitching was just run in that publication or on that podcast. So it might make you take a step back and go, oh, maybe I should think of a different topic or something to pitch, which is great. So I think in all of this too, just looking at that, when you're doing that research where your customers are, it's really important to know who your ideal customer is and create that customer avatar so that you're not just spinning your wheels. As much as we'd all like to say, oh, I can do my business with anybody, I think it's really important as well to pick that target market and work, within a niche of or one of your customer segments when you're doing this, so that you can be laser focused on what you're putting out there in your pitch. So going on that, if this is something that people know the story they want to pitch, they've found the media outlet, they either don't have the time or resources to do that pitch writing, or they're not comfortable doing their own writing, because I know there's a when you write your own bio, when you're telling your own story, sometimes we become a little too humble and we have to brag a little bit. So if you're going to work with a partner such as yourself, Sandra, or Baila, to get that support, what types of things should you be prepared or expect and should monitor when you do hire a third person or a third party to support you in that? So what should your expectations be in that as well? And Sandra, I'll let you go first on that one.
Yeah. So when we bring on a new client, we spend up to 2 weeks just figuring out, what we're just talking about, who exactly the audience is. So really getting to know their customers and clients, and then and everything about the business, because where an owner might not see a story, we might find one, right? It always takes that outside perspective, I think, to say, hey, you're doing this pretty cool, and very differently than everybody else I know in the industry is. So there's a potential story there. And so we start to uncover, these hidden treasures, I like to call them, that can be used later for when we're pitching, and that process is really important, because then that informs us who exactly we need to contact, and we start building that list, we start crafting those messages, and then hopefully by week 3 of when we are working with them, we can start to pitch some of those stories. But it takes as long as it takes. The faster that a client is willing to give us that information, the faster that we can get to telling their story. So for us, it's about a 2-week process, but yeah, give or take, it can take more than that.
And then as far as pitching that idea, I know, Sandra, you and I have been connected before, so I've seen some of your posts on Facebook and in emails where you're saying, hey, if you're thinking about, like right now for Christmas, it might be too late to pitch a story for Christmas. You should be thinking about Valentine's Day at this point if it's something relevant to you. So what kind of lead time should people expect? And again, we can add 2 or 3 weeks on that if you're working with a third party. But what is that turnaround time? And does it vary for different outlets as well, depending on whether you're traditional or new media?
Yeah, so for TV and radio, and we're talking talk shows, we like to give about 6 to 8 weeks. Again, it can always be shorter, but you want to give that amount of time, because you can't contact a talk show the week of when you're hoping to be on, because they've already booked everybody for that week. So you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks for broadcast. For print and online, it can be shorter. So I say 4 weeks is a safe bet. Although it can come out the next day, so just beware of that. And then for magazines, they have the longest. So some can get it out in 2 months. Some need 6 months, right? So September now, some magazines are already working on their spring issues. So they're way beyond even the holiday period. And I'm actually starting to see there's a site called helpareporterout.com that you should all sign up for, or HARO for short. And that's a great resource for media who are actually looking for particular stories. And so I'm on this e-list, and folks are already looking for holiday gift idea types of stories. So they're already looking to work on holiday stuff. Baila might be able to expand more, but generally those are the lead times that we work with.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly to correct that email, that URL. The site is called Help a Reporter Out, but the URL is helpareporter.com.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, helpareporter.com.
We'll share that in the email that we send out as well to make sure everybody's got that. So, yep.
And with regard to that, they pitch fast. They look for ideas fast and furiously. They'll put something in the morning at their early morning pitch at 6 a.m. and they need somebody for the afternoon. So I do quick searches. If I have keywords, I just do quick searches to find out if there's stories like that. So, the range is, as Sandra mentioned, magazines are the longest. I know for sure, even if you're looking at travel stories, for example, they work a year ahead of time. Typically, the magazines that I've written for or pitched for are 4 to 6 months, giving the lead time, because the editors need time to collect and then balance the different stories, and it's much harder to do when you're in a print publication. However, an online publication is a bit easier. So we're just entering October now. I think it would still be possible if you wanted to pitch for holiday stories for an online magazine like Vita. So Vita is a consumer magazine. They cover fashion and home and health and things like that. And they put together different sizes of stories, different kinds of stories, and it's all done online. So it would be about now that the editors would be looking to collect stories, I think, And you have to remember as well, sometimes there are holes that happen where things just drop out at the last minute. So an editor, when I was an editor, I could count any number of times where something would happen and I would be expecting a story and it would fall through. Either the reporter, something happened, or they couldn't get the person or whatever. And I'm left with a hole. And while that's a little less likely online because you can always adjust things online to fit, it's really important when you're going to print to have something to fill that. So even if you feel like you're last minute, like even if it's a magazine and it's maybe 2 months before it's supposed to, be distributed, they might be in production already. You might still luck out if you have a small item, if you can get directly to the editor. And I actually tell people to say in the subject line, do you have a hole to fill in this magazine? And if I were an editor and I saw that email, I would open that right away if I had a hole to fill. And then it's possible for you to drop in at the last minute. That's one thing I suggest if I have a client who's just waited to the last minute and they're really trying to get something in. But in general, a weekly paper would be about 4 to 6 weeks. As Sandra mentioned, 4 to 6 weeks is a good lead time for television as well. Radio might be a bit shorter. I actually suggest to people to, once you've identified a media outlet, connect with them to establish your first connection and ask them what your deadlines are. And that way you can kind of just make one connection. You can verify an email address. If you're trying to access an editor, email them and say, I have a quick question about deadlines. Can you tell me when you accept pitches for, column ideas for special sections or whatever you might be pitching? Yep. And if you put in the subject line, quick question, 9 times out of 10 they'll open it right away and send you a response back right away.
Okay, and that leads me to one of the questions we had come in as well, is that how do I rise above the noise to get my story noticed? How can I get someone to open my email? So are there any tips for that subject line, especially given now that, a lot of us are on mobile the majority of the time? So you've got that little subject line and maybe that first line of your email that's going to pop up. Sandra, maybe you can jump in there and Baila follow up with, what are some tips for writing a subject line that's going to get your request opened?
Yeah, we usually try and stick to 4 to 6 words. I know that's really short, but yeah, if you make it too long, then you'll see the rest of it cut off, right? Yep. So if you can get it within that viewable space, I think your chances are higher. For events, making sure the date is in there, because again, they can tell how much time they need to get the information, etc. And then in terms of formula, like I try to stick to like adjective, noun, verb, noun, something like that, so that there's a descriptor, there's a person, place, or thing, and then there's some sort of action. So it's not just like super vague and you don't really understand what's going on. And then again, keeping the email short, because if it's too long, then it's like, I need more time to read this, and then they might skip it and move on to other things. So again, just trying to keep that email space white and as effective as possible. And then I would also add following up. A lot of people just they send an email, pitch off, and then if they don't hear back, then they give up, right? But there is something to be said for following up by phone or following up by social media. If you form that relationship on social media with a media person, chances are they're good with checking that and responding that way. So we actually, we do a lot of following up by Twitter. And then that's your additional chance to remind them of the email that you've sent. And a lot of them will say, I saw that briefly. Can you send it again? Because they're just bogged down by their email inboxes, right? So just being aware of that. I can imagine
a journalist's inbox. It must be scary at times for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And this really is, like in this conversation when I'm hearing about your recommendations and what we should do, it really is, while it's marketing, it's also sales. So you have to put your sales hat on and think, okay, what is the benefit to that end user? What am I providing? Again, like what problem am I solving? And until you get a no, they haven't said no, right? So again, that follow-up is key because, maybe you did get lost in the shuffle, but not on purpose. So, until somebody says, no, we're not interested, I like that recommendation to definitely follow up.
Yeah, and you'll often get folks who are, or I covered that, recently, but try this person. And, because people move
perfect.
Departments all the time. And so and that gives you a chance to actually update your media list and your contacts and figure out, who's covering something different and who else I can pitch for future. So.
Yeah. And Baila, maybe you can say, so now we've done the pitch, we've crafted that, who we are, kind of what we do, who we serve, why you want to run our story. So your pitch has been accepted, so now the media is getting in touch with you and said, yes, we love your story. Give us more. What do we expect? What should we have ready? What do we need to have prepared? So when we do get the yes, it's a quick turnaround time to provide them what they need.
Yeah, first I just really, really want to jump in on how to stand above the crowd.
Perfect.
Something that people always forget is called mail. I know we haven't used it in a while, but you take the E off the front and it's called mail. This is amazing because in the past we would receive stacks of mail. Now we don't. Our mailbox has, like our inbox with mail has 3 or 4 items. So while we're sitting there having morning coffee looking at our computer, we're opening physical mail. We're likely to open 100% of the physical mail that we receive. And if you can put a little something inside the envelope that makes us wonder what's inside there, if you have a tea company, put a tea bag in. If you have something that you can, I had somebody representing the Kidney Association wrap their pitch around a can of kidney beans. You can go back to that notion of, hey, you know what, if I receive something physical, I'm going to be more interested and you will stand out. So that's number one. And number two, really important, if you are pitching to a specific section, and you can very often find what people need in what's called editorial calendars. So as an example, Business in Vancouver every week has a special section. Let's say you wanted to be in the small business section. In your subject line, all you would have to do is say small business section story idea, or small business section column idea, or a December issue, holiday stories, interior design. Whatever the section is, the editor is going to be looking for that keyword in the subject line and looking to fill that section. So I know that when I would see somebody who had written sustainability section, great story for you, I knew they had done their research, they had taken their time to understand what I need, and they had identified the exact place that their information was going to go. I would open it right away. So those two key points, send mail, put your section in the subject line. Now, following up what you just asked, so as soon as you start your pitching sessions, whether you're sending email or mail or whoever you're pitching to, start your preparation for either on phone or in-person interview. So if we assume that you're going to get an interview, somebody's going to pick up the phone and call you, and let's say they're doing an article for a magazine and they want to interview you, have your notes beside you, have key points ready to go. You don't have to script it, but maybe 1 or 2 sentences if you really want to make a point very clear. And as I said earlier, make sure that what you do is very clearly articulated. You might want to write that sentence out. You can bring notes in if you go into a radio interview, and even I suggest to people even to have it if you're going into a TV interview, just to look at beforehand to remind yourself what you want to say. And have people practice with you. You want to be able to feel natural when people are doing interviews. Some people can do that right off the bat. They don't really need the practice. Other people might stutter, in come the ums and ahs. They get flustered. So you just want to make sure if it is a broadcast interview that you can be as smooth as possible. And if it's a reporter who's doing something print or online, make sure that you're able to have those sentences said in a way where if they're recording it and they're going to type it out and put it in, it's exactly what you want to say. And then the other point I would bring up, before or after the interview, see if you can get a copy of whatever is going to be produced. So if it's an article, get a PDF. If it's an audio interview, that if you're going to be going onto a radio show, if they can't give you a copy, bring a little recorder. Try and get that copy for yourself so you can then put it on your media page. A lot of time people rely too much on links to other people's sites, and what will happen is within 6 months or a year, that link will be dead. You won't find your interview anymore. So always try to ask for a copy of whatever's going to happen when that person contacts you.
Perfect. And quickly, we're getting close to the end of our call already. I feel like we could talk about this for hours. You guys are a wealth of information for sure. I just wanted to briefly touch on earned media and paid media and the difference there and what people should look out for if they get requested for some of that paid media. So maybe, Sandra, you can just quickly speak to that.
Sure. I mean, earned media is always the goal, right? Because it doesn't cost you anything except for your time. Nowadays, because it's so common for outlets to offer advertorials, to ask for, sponsored posts, I do recommend to all our clients, if you want to guarantee a story in a particular outlet, be prepared to budget for it. So going back to planning, who exactly you're going to target and what angle you're going to take depending on what they're covering during the year, you can actually plan out your entire year of what you could possibly be sharing, right, and allocate a budget accordingly. So where am I going with this? Just be prepared to have a budget. I think especially if you're in the B2C world, in lifestyle. I mean, the word influencer hasn't been mentioned yet, but that's sort of your new age blogger, right? Whereas before you used to pitch a story to a blogger, maybe they need a sample or a sample of your product, and that would be it. If they're high in numbers and you want them to review, they may have a budget that you need to invest in, right? And so I think a good goal is to always aim for the earned media, but just be aware that, if you want to be in a particular outlet, just be prepared to pay for it.
Okay. So what I might do, we've got 10 minutes left. I know we've covered a lot, and hopefully the participants on the call have made some notes of questions they might like to ask. So again, if anybody has a question, if you've muted yourself, you can hit *6 to unmute. And I would like to open it up. So if there's anyone on, please just say your name and then your question.
Whoa.
Hi, my name is Lindsay. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have found I'm in the financial services industry, and I've kind of heard rumors around, that it's harder in certain industries to get covered because of, where the sponsorship budgets are coming from for these media outlets. And obviously, banks and financial companies have fairly deep marketing pockets. And so I'm wondering if that's true, and then if it is, how could I get around that and still get covered?
I'll take that. Yeah. Okay. That's in the short term. Yeah. We had years ago. I used to produce a panel discussion, and one of them had to do with investing in finances and business, and the panel was people like yourselves, just experts in the industry. And we had sponsors for the events, and they would have their names up and be able to do the introductions, but they weren't on the panel. Now the panels are made up of those sponsors. And it is I have to say it's sad, but it has become a reality of sponsors are getting sticky. They just say, listen, if you're not going to have me on your panel, I'm not going to sponsor you. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough slog, but here's what I would say. Building your reputation, you can still get access to things like writing advice columns in areas, in a wide variety of areas. I'll give you an example. There's a magazine called Retirement Ready that's produced by Business in Vancouver. They just started this a couple of years ago. It comes out at the end of every year, beginning like January of the new year. And if you have advice, financial advice for people who are retiring, you can pitch a column to that magazine, and there's no problem. They're not going to decide to take you or not take you based on sponsorship. They'll look at your quality of writing and whether or not, if you've looked at previous magazines and you see, oh, here's a topic they didn't cover, you pitch the editor, again, in the subject line, Retirement Ready magazine column idea, and you say, hey, I've read your magazines. Here's a story or column idea that I have that you haven't covered. Here's an interesting angle. And then give a few topics, bullet points. Here's what I can cover. So there's still the outlets that you can find that will not make the decisions based on sponsorship. There will be situations where they will make decisions based on sponsorship. But I believe there's still plenty out there. It's just a matter of it's kind of doing an end run or a side run or getting in the side door, just broadening the story ideas you have. Just like Sandra mentioned, it takes a long time to work with a client and find out all the different aspects of their expertise in order to be able to pitch them in a wide variety of places.
Mm-hmm. So further to that, I'm just going to quickly ask Baila, is a blog something that you as the media person, when you get that pitch, is that something you're going to look for on someone's website to learn more about their expertise, their writing style, the content that they might be able to provide?
Yeah, that's why the media page or newsroom, as Sandra called it, is so important. Mm-hmm. On that page on your website, you should have samples. If you've been in audio, TV, or writing samples, put them right there. Just say, here are 10 samples of my writing. Here are the 10 topics. This one is, I wrote for this other paper, or this is something I wrote on my blog. And you could put a link to your blog as well. Mm-hmm. You might even have a list of 50 topics on a separate page where I used to work with somebody. I could just pick one of those pre-written columns and pop it into the newspaper if I felt that the material and the writing was appropriate.
Okay, perfect. And I think we had another question that was trying to be asked at the same time. Is there someone on the call that had another question?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Under what circumstances does it make sense to write a press release and then distribute it on one of the press release distribution services like PR Newswire? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I prefer not to use those. Again, early in my career, I did do them for clients, and they get distributed in some places like Google News, Yahoo News. But in terms of actual story pickup, I found virtually no outlets came back as a result of that. And it's sort of like, again, you're blasting the same message to everyone, whereas, when we do email pitches, we prefer that, our business pitch is going to be a little bit different from the lifestyle pitch, right? So it does take a lot more work to do it that way, but we get more results as a result. And I just also the last time I used a newswire, because my email address was there, I got a ton of spam back, and not from the people that I wanted to respond. So that's my take on newswires. I just don't encourage anybody to use them.
I think there's a possibility you could get very lost in that noise too, right? Because there's probably a lot of people that would go there. Yeah. So I think taking that more targeted approach that we discussed and really, putting in that effort, doing a little bit of homework, doing that research, and then really targeting the media outlet that's going to find you potentially new customers. And going back to the following up on a pitch and how it is a little bit of, sales. You're trying to sell the story idea. Just the thought I had is at what point, Baila, maybe would you have, this company is sending you a pitch once a month with different ideas, or maybe it's once a quarter. What type of frequency should you look at if, let's say, you're really targeting this one particular magazine to get an article in? How often should you send a pitch if you keep getting no replies?
So at the beginning, so what I would do, the frequency is, let's say, the first week of a month you send out your pitch. Maybe it ended up in spam. So a week later, providing you've given yourself enough time and you're not running to a tight deadline.
Right.
A week later, I would forward that same pitch. This is interesting. Forward it, and in the subject line put follow up, and then send it to the same person, and at the top say, just checking if you saw this. When they see follow up in the subject line, very often, for myself anyway, I would see that maybe I missed something, and so I might be more likely to open it. If there's no response, I do suggest one phone call and then wait another month. So I would suggest following up once a month. After a few months, if there's no response to phone calls, try and vary the people that you send it to. So maybe you're going to the editor at first, then associate editor, journalist, and of course, starting off with people who might be writing or covering a certain beat would be the best place to go, and then being able to trying to access through different social media channels. I think I would probably do that for 6 months before I would say that this isn't working, they're not interested.
Okay.
But I'd be very surprised if you didn't get any response in that time.
Okay, perfect. So unfortunately, we're getting very close to the end of our time on the phone. And just a reminder to everyone, we've had a lot of great resources and thoughts and ideas on the call today. So we will be sending out an email within the next 24 hours or so. And Sandra and Baila have both offered to put some great recommendations of support resources for you in there. And as well, the recording of this call will be up on our website hopefully by the end of the week as well. So there'll be a link in that email as well. And then, of course, we always ask for feedback on the session and any topics you would like a call like this to be on in the future. If there's another subject area where you would like to find a couple of experts to join us and provide you support for your business, please recommend those as well. And the first thing I want to do is thank both Sandra and Baila for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us and giving your time to WEC and our clients. Thank you so much, both of you. And if either of you have any kind of follow-up thoughts or ideas you want to share in that email, please forward those to me, and we will include those as well. And then just quickly, the next Mentor Advisory Forum we're going to have is on October 24th at 10 a.m., and it's on out-of-the-box funding for your business. So what are some of the alternatives other than a traditional debt loan that you might take? And that's going to be facilitated by our Director of Business Development, who's also a CPA, Kath Britton. And we have Jill Earthy, who is the Chief Growth Officer from FundFunder on the call, and Julia Church, who is one of our clients and owner of Nettletails Swimmer out of Vancouver, and she's gone that route. She's had both traditional and non-traditional funding, so she's going to share a bit of her story as well on how she financed the growth of her business. So please join us on October 24th. To get tips and advice on out-of-the-box funding for your business. And, of course, at any time, please go to our website at wec.ca for any announcements, updates, events, etc. that might be going on. So, again, Sandra and Baila, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone on the call. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day, and we will speak to you all again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kerrilee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.